Hello everyone, SirMonkeySuit Zabby here, back again with Hunter x Hunter. We're on episode 54, and in the last episode, we finished off the fight between Crollo versus Zeno and Silver, the Zoldyck family, who basically didn't kill Crollo based on the fact that Illumi was paid off by Crollo to take out the 10 Dons, and once the 10 Dons were dead, the Silver and Zeno weren't going to get paid. So they were like, oh, fine then. You know what I mean? That's it. You know what I mean? They're hired hitmen. If they're not going to be paid, then that's it. It's not exactly a personal hit more than... It may be so for Silver. Because there's still like a bit of... Seems to be like a bit of, love lost there. But, we'll have to wait and see if that ever crops up again. Illumi is back in the fray. That's not surprising, obviously, because there was a connection between him and Hisoka during the Hunter exam, and we know that Hisoka was a part of the Phantom Troop, from the very beginning of the show. So it's not surprising that that was the case. We had Kurapika, who's now out of sorts and feeling empty because of the fact that the Phantom Troop are pronounced dead, and he believes so. Even though I thought that he might have picked up on the fake eyes, but he never did. It's possible that the reason why he never figured it out is possibly because he doesn't want to deeply stare into the eyes of one of his ancestors. You know what I mean? Like, that's not surprising. It's a very sore subject for him, so I doubt that he would want to focus a hell of a lot on the eyes and figure that out for himself. But it is horrible for Kurapika now. But I don't think there's anything else to really talk about. So let's get into episode 54 and see what we get. Let's go. Okay, episode 54. Wow. That was a really cool episode. I liked the idea of getting each individual's future laid out for them, and how, because just by getting the one for Crollo, or even just the one for Nobunaga, eventually when you start getting the other members fortune told, and they have little key differences within the verses, you kind of get it's like solving a jigsaw puzzle in a way, and you can kind of hazard a guess as to how things will end up playing out. The only thing that obviously is a throw off is obviously the Hisoka thing at the end, where the fortune clearly changed, but we'll get to that because I literally went through, it took us a good 15 minutes to go through and then just jot everything down, all of the different lines and stuff. We'll go through those. But we'll start from the very beginning of the episode. So we got a little flashback to young Crollo playing in what was essentially like a junkyard, which it still is in a way, but it was later obviously revealed it's Meteor City. So they were passing around a VHS tape, and whatever that means. I don't know if there's some sort of symbolism with the VHS tape, or it's just they're just chucking things around. I don't know, but I think what that does explain is that Crollo was possibly left there as a kid. The Oreo was talking about it and how anything can be dumped there, including children. So I figure that he probably was one of those children that was just left there, and then left with the other people who, essentially those who live there, have a strong bond. So his family is those from Meteor City. That also plays into one of the verses, one of the lines from the verses they are on, and referring to the one where they get homesick, right? They're wanting to go back to Meteor City where they originated from. That was interesting. We also got Kurapika and all of the main four got back together again, which was nice. Seeing Kurapika sort of especially after the last episode, being able to be lighthearted and it's nice, because we've had that moment before, back in and around the Hunter exam arc and whatnot, that, just Gon, Killua being kids and playing around and it being like very lighthearted. Like it's nice for him, especially what happened after the last episode. It's kind of a way for him to almost like it takes his mind off it. So yeah, Kurapika also had mentioned, and I'd like the imagery of it's a Nen blade pointed at his heart. Because the idea around the condition thing and how it's a risk. I've been trying to figure out exactly how it works within the context of the world and what allows that for him to be the case. And that the resolve is needed for there to be any real change, and how much more powerful you can actually get when one has a fucking literally like a blade at your heart where you to do something else so that it would kill you. It makes sense. And I just like the imagery of it being there, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's really cool. I also believe that may have something connected to a line of a verse later on, but we'll get to that. If I remember, hopefully I do, because I don't know how long this is going to take to go through the discussion for this episode. So, I'll try and relate it back if I remember on. I was wondering when Killua basically stood up and was like, "Why are you telling us this?" I was like, "What does he mean? Why?" But it makes sense considering the fact that Pakanoga can read minds. And then that's the thing. But I don't think Killua ever mentioned about them reading minds, right? Or did he do that over the phone a couple episodes ago? I can't fucking remember. But, it was obviously something that was kind of a bit out of Kurapika's control. But Kurapika did mention, like, the fact that, like, he felt a bit at rest and at ease. Like, he can take his foot off the gas because the chief is dead and whatnot. So, he can, like, sort of... It's like a weight's being lifted off his shoulders. But of course that changes very soon. So yeah, from that we go into where the Phantom Troop are and Chrollo being able to use the fortune reading power that he stole from Neon. And we've got the I wanted to know what that fucking little creature was, if it was actually Chrollo's power, and that's like the creature that is used to symbolize him stealing someone's power, and it does make more sense that it's the fortune telling creature or whatever, which is why it makes sense that the person who's writing it doesn't know what it is, because it wasn't them that wrote it. So it's interesting, that little creature that writes the fortunes, in what way, like, what is that thing and how does it relate to the world in which they live? Like, is it a fucking angel? Is it a, what I mean, like a godly entity? I don't know, you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing, like the world building, that I think I would love to know in this show. Like, it'd be nice to have like that sort of detail about what these things are and how it works and how Nen works and stuff like that, you know what I mean? I want the background on those things, because while Nen is extremely cool and very diverse in what it can accomplish, you know what I mean, I love it. It has in this story kind of just appeared, and it's like you're kind of supposed to take at face value, like, this thing, like, it is Nen, it can do a million different things, it can do a million different things with it and use it in different ways, but I want to know where the source lies of it. I know that it's like life aura and things like that, but like, just controlling it, like, where it just, like, it's mostly that creature thing that I don't get, because that seems to be a separate entity and not an aura thing doing it, you know what I mean? So, there's like little bits there which I would like to know about, but anyway, whatever. The idea of Chrollo wanting to leave and go back was to, with their desire to change the future, knowing that half of them will die if they stay here and fight the Chain User, which obviously, makes sense, considering the fact that it goes across, like, into next week. That would happen next week. If they leave, they don't come into contact with them next week, then how could it possibly happen, right? So yeah, There is a thing as well connecting that one that I just but that's to do with Crollo basically saying like we won't run into the chain user next week. So it's interesting because when Killua is basically saying that we should go attack them now because they might be escaping, little do they know, like, he's completely on the right track. Like, you know what I mean? Without even, he's saying exactly what they're thinking. Like, they are wanting to escape so they can get away from the chain user. And it was obviously a good thing that Hisoka had tipped them off that they were fake bodies, because now we are going back to that route. Originally, Kurapika was going to be like, no, I'll do what Gon said and go get my clan's eyes back. But now I think we're back on to going to fight them. So yeah, we won't run into the chain user next week, and that is entirely dependent on the fact of Kurapika knowing that they are not like escaping. You know what I mean? To like go underground and basically slip away into the shadows. But with the idea that Kurapika does now know that they are alive, there can be things that are put in place which will allow him to run into the Phantom Troop within that time frame. So yeah, that was entirely dependent on from the Phantom Troop's point of view versus what is actually happening and what information the likes of Kurapika knows. So yeah, interesting. And yeah, I think that's it. So now we will move on to the fortunes, right? So this is like the kind of meat of the episode and what was really interesting. So Nobunaga, we'll start off with his since he was the first. The first two were exactly the same. After that, it said the first moon, having missed his opportunity, continues to pursue the 11th moon alone. So the first moon, that's interesting. I would have to assume you see, having missed his opportunity, when would that be? Like, what time frame would that? Because remember, Nobunaga has that sort of bond. He had that bond with Uva where he was his best mate and stuff like that. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was to just sort of let the Phantom Troop go its own way and he just goes off on his own to try and do stuff. But that is completely dependent on whether or not Nobunaga is the first moon. I would have assumed beforehand that the chief was the first moon because he's the chief, so he's number one, right? Like, I mean, logically that kind of makes sense to me, but I don't know. So I could be relating to Crollo, I guess, having missed his opportunity, but alone though. You know what I mean? Like that's the weird thing. Because if it didn't have the whole idea of him pursuing the 11th moon alone, then there would be maybe a case for it to say it was Crollo, because the first moon, having missed his opportunity to escape, now decides, right? But the interesting thing is that continues to pursue the 11th moon. Oh, but wait, if he knows that the 11th moon, Uvo, is now dead, then maybe that is another way of saying that he will die as well. Because if he pursues the 11th moon, what is he pursuing? Uvo? Uvo's dead. So if you're pursuing him, if you're possibly pursuing him to the afterlife, right? Then that might be telling us there that Nobunaga is another one that will die. Because we only got 3 others, right? We only got, like, it was, it said half the limbs, and it only said that Pakinura, Shizuku, and Shalnak will be the other ones, right? So there's still 2 unaccounted for that we don't know who else will die. And if that is what it's saying, then maybe that's the case. It's just trying to figure out, like, the ins and outs of what the verse means. Because obviously with it being very poetic in terms of, you know, the way that it's written, it can mean different things. And I've said that before about prophecy and stuff, that it's not meant to be taken literally sometimes and whatever, but It can mean a whole bunch of things, especially considering the different fortune tellings for the different people and stuff. But yeah, so I guess we've covered that topic. It would be nice to know what their numbers were so that you could relate to the different things. But I think there's a reason why they're not telling us some things, so that it'll obviously become a revelation later on. So yeah, but anyway, yeah. So first moon, having missed his opportunity, continues to pursue the 11th moon alone. But the spider does not stop. So, oh yeah, I'm just reading out the things. I'm not reading out like the full poem because obviously in between there's different things. So the one before that would be is it the chrysanthemum withers and falls? Oh no, it's even after losing half its limbs. Yeah, but the spider does not stop. So yeah, it is a little bit different then. I thought it might have been. Because in the first one with Crollo, when he originally got his fortune told, it was even after losing half your limbs. But then in this one, I'm sure in this episode, I didn't write it down. Fuck! I should have, but I thought it was the same fucking line, so I didn't write it down twice. So I think it said, even after losing half its limbs. It's interesting that from Crollo's fortune telling, it is like it's his limbs, whereas when in regards to this one in Nobunaga's, it's pronounced it, right? It's weird how the difference in word there is not possessive, whereas for Crollo's it is. Because then I guess it could just be the case of, Crollo is the leader of the group, therefore it's kind of his thing, right? So it's your limbs. Whereas with just the members, the word its limbs, I guess, kind of relates to it. But, I figured that, they were all like in it together, so it would all be your limbs. But because when I was writing this down, I was thinking, wait a minute, but the spider does not stop, even when it's lost half its limbs, makes me think that maybe it wasn't referring to, or it could be a double entendre and a double meaning that, yeah, half the limbs of the Phantom Troop, half of the people will die, but also the fact that whoever that is referring to actually does lose half their limbs. You know what I mean? But still tries to fight. So it could be that, but it could not be. That's what we discuss for. That's why we theorize. You know what I mean? The meanings of what things could be and what things might be and whatever. So yeah, those were the little the differences in Nobunaga's. Shizuku obviously got up and took the thing to say it as well, which is interesting, especially considering what happened later with Hisoka, because Shizuku went and saw it, right? But she never pointed out any inconsistencies in Nobunaga's, and I think that's obviously because Nobunaga wasn't reading it out loud, right? So she had nothing to compare against. It makes me wonder if what Nobunaga was reading, as soon as Shizuku went to read it, I wonder if it said something different, because we didn't get that, right? The only things that would have probably remained the same were obviously the ones that had already happened. So obviously when referring to the first one's calendar loses a precious component, remaining months gather to mourn, right? Because it seems like that is the constant between the lot of them, aside from Hisoka, because obviously he's not a member of the Phantom Troop. So I wonder if she never really paid attention to what the rest of them were actually saying, but based upon the fact that Nobunaga had he'd figured out that losing the limbs meant that it was half of the actual Phantom Troop. Maybe it said something similar, but nothing that Shizuku could have had a look at and seen, but it says nothing about that here. So, but it's interesting because I think that does play into how the fortune telling actually did change when it was passed on, but we'll get to that later. So on to Shizuku's fortune telling. Same two lines again. Then it goes into, you join your ally as an offering to keep him from being lonely. Now, The first thing that obviously tells me is that she willingly gives up her life, maybe to save another Phantom Troop member, and obviously, joining her ally Uvo up in the afterlife or whatever, right? But when I was writing it down, I was thinking it might mean something else, and it could actually be you join your ally as an offering, offering to join somebody who maybe might be, like doing their own thing. So, for instance, if you were to, Nobunaga, the whole idea about him possibly just, leaving the Phantom Troop to do their thing while he goes out and searches for revenge or avenging Uvo or whatever, that Shizuku might join up with Nobunaga just to stop him from being alone, Again, it could make sense. I think it obviously makes sense more in the first thing about, joining, dying and going up to join with Uvo, but it's interesting nonetheless to talk about. Obviously the one where it's like, no, she will die, is you will find eternal rest in a room filled with black merchandise, which was running through my head what black merchandise could be, and I don't know. Black, I mean, the fact that it says, actually, no, I don't think that would be the case. I was thinking about her weapon and how it sucks up things, right? I was wondering if there could be a way to use it against her, but I think it's her own nen, so I don't think that would work. What I was thinking of, maybe because she was sucking up like all these mafia people, right, who obviously mafia dress in black, that she would suffer the same fate, and therefore she would find eternal rest in a room filled with black merchandise. Since it's like a vacuum, right, she would get sucked up by her own thing, and then forever she would lay to rest in the same place where all of those black, suited mafia people are now, because, the way she kind of looks at those people is like as merchandise and not as living people. Because originally I was thinking like maybe it is living people, but then I was like, well, the idea of the word being merchandise kind of goes against that. But the way that she might think about those kind of people, just sucking them up, you know what I mean, like it's fucking dirt on the floor, or you know what I mean. So it's possible. I just don't know if it's feasible. You know what I mean? Like I don't think it's because I feel like that whole vacuum thing is a part of her nen, right? If she is a conjurer or whatever, then to be able to conjure that whole thing up, if it's her own nen, I don't think it's possible that she could suck herself within her own self. It's kind of like the idea that you couldn't shove yourself up your own arse, for example, and just disappear, right? So yeah, but black merchandise, that was the only thing I could really equate to what it possibly could be that we've already sort of seen before. Otherwise I don't know, but it may be a thing that we haven't seen yet, and that by the time, if we do see anything with a room that is just filled with black shit, we may have a clue as to what is about to happen. So I don't know, I'll keep my eyes peeled anyway. So the last part of it is beware solitude, above all you have the most fear when you are alone with another. It's interesting. That line, because it's sort of hypocritical against itself, and it kind of doesn't make sense unless it means you are alone with another. The another would have to be a stranger then, because the only other option would be Hisoka, right? Because otherwise it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think. Beware solitude above all. To be alone, you know what I mean? But if you're with another person, technically you're not alone. So I would have to assume that it is a stranger. It's either Hisoka or it's a stranger. So yeah. Interesting though. It's also very interesting that none of them seemed phased. Like the ones who are like, we are going to die, don't seem phased. That being said, it could also be the case of like, well, yeah, we are leaving, so we are changing the future, so we're not going to die. You know what I mean? I guess it kind of makes sense with Shizuku because she's very, like, straight-faced. She doesn't really have any emotions anyway, so I guess it makes sense for her. But, like, even the other one, like, for instance, Shalnark. I figured at least he would be a bit, you know, because he has that kind of, he's a bit more emotionally, like, sort of out there, even though he is creepy because he is always smiling and everything and just having a good time. But, you know, I don't know. I thought there would have been some reaction, but there just doesn't seem to be any. But yeah, they might be just thinking, oh, we're just going to change the future anyway because we know what it is. So yeah, Shizuku very smart as well, picking up on the whole thing between, you know, it's not only the 11th, you know, calendar, like, month or, you know, number in the Phantom Troop that is mentioned here. The chrysanthemum thing, I thought the idea, the chrysanthemum is normally a fucking flower for death. So that's where, like, the writing in here is very, very, very well done. Because it having double entendres, and that's what I keep saying, like, the idea that it could mean something, could mean something else, you know. But yeah, so the chrysanthemum is the flower of September. That's something I didn't know anyway, so I would never have got it. But that refers to number 9, who is Pakanoda. So yeah, if we refer that to the original like poem line of the chrysanthemum withers and falls, that obviously went through the other fortune telling as well, but the chrysanthemum withers and falls, the fact that that is constant throughout the other fortune tellings makes me think that that one is inevitably going to happen. You know, and you know, also from the fact that she has a really, what they call, like, a rare ability, you know, and a very bad one to have at that. Considering I feel like Kurapika's always got the advantage as long as they don't know that he is the one. They will figure it out eventually, but one, you know, at some point, yeah, it's going to be scary. So yeah, I feel like maybe Pakanoda is one that is definitely going to bite the bullet. So yeah, and then we have it blooms in August, 8, Shizuku, right? So yeah, same old. And then withers in June, number 6, which is Shalnark. So I mean, that is very out there, that one. Like, you know, the whole idea about, like, the chrysanthemum being, you know, it's the flower of September, blooms in August, withers in June, tie them to these different numbers. Now I think the writing is smart to where I believe that is actually the case. That is what the fortune telling is saying, but it is a bit out there to, you know, presume that would be the case. But I think it is anyway. So, you know, it's interesting nonetheless. So yeah. Anyway, after all that, they talk about the Scarlet Eyes, and, you know, they figure out that, you know, the Kurta clan thing, you know, and that goes with what Nobunaga said like a few episodes ago when he was talking about they're out for revenge and they're on their own. It's like, you know, so, you know, that makes sense. But also when they're talking about, you know, next to bloody Scarlet Eyes, it makes me think that Kurapika is possibly, I'm just trying to think who would it be. Most likely Pakanoda, I think. It's most likely that them two will fight. And the idea of him lying, you know, Scarlet Eyes, I don't think because he's in the poem that refers to him dying. It seems to be across the board that the Phantom Troop themselves are talking only about themselves. The Scarlet Eyes thing is just a thing of, like, it's like the same with the black merchandise. I feel like it's a thing that is relevant to the place that they will die, but it doesn't mean that person will die. You know what I mean? I think it's only relevant to the person who has the fortune telling. I think, you know, if Kurapika actually was to die at some point in the very near future and he had a fortune telling, that it would tell him that he would die in certain surroundings and things. But I think lying beside bloody Scarlet Eyes, I think refers to the fact that, you know, they've had a very vicious, brutal battle and Kurapika is bleeding, you know, because of the fight that he's just had. But, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. So yeah, that brings us to Hisoka and the very, very interesting one. Okay, so I'm so glad we got this one. I was thinking we weren't going to get this one, and if we were, we like, you know, I saw Hisoka like reading the thing, and I was like, we're not even going to get it, are we? We're just going to see him like pull some face, like, ooh, you know what I mean? But we did get it, so great. So a red-eyed customer will visit your shop. It's interesting. You see, this one is the most interesting, not because obviously it's Hisoka and he's not a Phantom Troop member, and that because Hisoka is actually the hardest like character to read out of the lot of them. It's interesting knowing things going forward, but the things that have already happened, like a red-eyed customer will visit your shop, this is where you kind of get the idea that you know that the way that the fortune writes itself, being very poetic, means that you should take some things with a grain of salt and not just, you know, take them as literal, because a red-eyed customer will visit your shop. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bit weird, isn't it? I feel like it was mostly like Hisoka inviting Kurapika to his shop. You know what I mean? And it wasn't even a shop. Although you could, like, because it was a carnival kind of place, right? Where Hisoka and Kurapika met up. So I guess you probably could refer to the carnival as Hisoka's shop because it means the most, right? Like it's like his thing. But yeah, so yeah, a red-eyed customer will visit your shop, obviously referring to Kurapika. Half angel, half deathbringer. I like that as well, the fact that, you know what I mean, Kurapika is he is like, I think that's the best describer of Kurapika, as a half angel, half deathbringer, you know what I mean? Because he does stuff for the, like, you know, for the right reasons, you know what I mean? He's not a bad person, he's a good person. Yeah, he brings death upon people in a badass way. So yeah, that makes sense to me. You would do well to sell the calendar's secrets, in which he obviously does. And it's interesting. I think that you would do well to sell the calendar's secrets. If that refers to the fact of the dead bodies being fake, it's interesting the fact that he did that right before he got his fortune told. And that, you know, it you know, goes without saying. It's just interesting to see it like kind of all play out that way. He will be especially pleased to learn the 11th moon secret. Now that's the thing where it tells me like maybe you would do well to sell the calendar's secrets, that maybe it's not referring to what he just did there, because why would he need to learn the 11th moon secret? You know, after he's already dealt with them, you know, and he doesn't need to worry about Uva anymore. But, you know, never the case. The customer will return on a hot day, so this is something that definitely hasn't happened yet, right? Leaving you alone with a man bearing St. Peter's cross. Now, I kind of want to look this up because, you know, I'm not a religious guy. You know, I know what a cross is. I just need to see what exactly Peter's cross is. St. Peter's cross. Ah, right. It's the upside down one. This is like, that's like isn't St. Peter's cross like the Satanist symbol? It says it's traditionally used as a Christian symbol, but I'm sure an upside down cross is the symbol of Satan, right? It's satanic, isn't it? Interesting. Yeah, because wasn't St. I don't know. St. Peter was he the one that he was one of the ones that was up on the cross, right? But wasn't he like a betrayer or something? There was something like that. Anyway, yeah, I just wanted to see what the icon was because I'm sure that is a symbol for Satan. So yeah, right. Interesting then. That'll be something that I'll be looking out for. Right. So yeah, leaving you on a hot day, leaving you alone with a man bearing St. Peter's cross, and I don't think if we have seen that guy before, because it could be a character like, for instance, it could be Crollo, but you know, from his like outfit and stuff, it might have been something like in the background you just didn't notice it, kind of thing, you know, but he was wearing it like the whole time. I don't know, but it'll be something that I'll definitely have to look out for. The false fourth moon will be torn away from the calendar. Only 6 pages remain. Now the interesting thing about this is because obviously Hisoka not being a true member of the Phantom Troop, meaning that, you know, he being torn away could possibly mean that is the moment where they realize Hisoka is not a true Phantom Troop member, or like that is the moment where Hisoka has completely disregarded anything from the Phantom Troop, and now he's he's not a part of them at all anymore at that point. That'll be interesting. So yeah. So yeah, at that point, that is the point where only 6 pages remain. So this has to take place. This would have to take place after half of the other limbs or whatever have been, dealt with and they're dead, right? So yeah, that one's possibly quite a way off. Interesting as well, how the number 4 is always associated with Hisoka, that if you're talking about months, that it's the April month, and April 1st being April Fool's Day. Like, I've got to wonder if like that was entirely on purpose. I feel like it almost has to be, right? It just has to be. It's just funny though. Right, so that was Hisoka's. Now he passes it off to Pakanoda, and then when Nobunaga, like, it's interesting again because Pakanoda reads it, and then Shizuku reads it, and we don't hear anything from them other than they visibly like sort of like gasp and react, and then Nobunaga gets it. So, seeking to make a trade, right? So yeah, we get the whole thing of like a red-eyed customer visit your shop or whatever, but instead of half angel, half Deathbringer, it's seeking to make a trade, right? So yeah, they were making a trade, right? It was a trade agreement from like information, right, from both sides, and that was it, right? It wasn't any materialistic thing. It was entirely information based, and that was what it was. The customer will use the sword of law upon you, and taking the calendar's secrets with him. The only thing, when I was writing this down, the only thing I could have assumed the sword of law meant was actually that Kurapika himself had actually used the condition thing on Hisoka, because it's the sword of law, meaning that you either adhere to it or you don't, and if you don't, then you're kind of brought into like sort of like you know what I mean, this like sort of like law abiding contract thing that you have to do, otherwise you'll suffer for it, right? And I thought it was that. But that was something that never happened, right? And if we're going by the verses and where they should take place in, like, relative to all of the other fortune-telling things, then that should be still something that has already taken place, right? So I think this is where the sort of title of the episode comes into play, where its fortunes aren't right, where there's actually differences based upon who's reading them. And that's why it's so bizarre. I would love to know if it's a case of the fortune, if somebody, so Hisoka is given the fortune, right? But if Nobunaga reads Hisoka's fortune, it was always going to be that way. He was always going to see it as that fortune. Like it would never change based upon who's seen it. Because my thought was, the reason why his fortune changed when it passed to Pakanoda was because other people know. I thought maybe it was a case because he has changed his future based upon doing something like giving somebody else his fortune. You know what I mean? It just makes me wonder if no matter what piece of paper you are holding, it always retains to the person that's holding it. You know? Like, it changes on who's holding it, and they would read something that actually, instead of thinking that it refers to the fortune it was written for, actually refers to the person who is holding it and reading it. Because if that's the case, then they are thinking that this is Hisoka's fortune. But who the fuck knows? If when Nobunaga picks it up, if he reads a red-eyed customer will visit your shop, if it's now referring to Nobunaga, meaning that Kurapika comes to see Nobunaga, right? Seeking to make a trade. who knows what it could mean? But it's interesting that it could be referring to Nobunaga at this point because he is holding the piece of paper. It's no longer to do with Hisoka. The customer will use the sword of law upon you, meaning that actually in this what I'm basically talking myself into. I actually believe this now. I think what I'm talking about is the true thing. I think whoever's holding the piece of paper, that is your fortune. It no longer refers to the fortune that it was just written for. So for instance, like, I could get my fortune told, right? And for me, that is my fortune. But if I give it to you and you read it, suddenly it's about you and it's not about me anymore. You know? But because they believe in that, they think that the writing itself is not changing. They think that they're getting it, and it's Hisoka's fortune. Because Hisoka was so, because he like give it up willingly and was fine with it. It makes me wonder if Hisoka actually, if he believes that is how it works, because he was willingly giving it up, you know. I think he was getting ready as well because he took out a card, didn't he? He was getting ready in case a fight broke down, which is, yeah, interesting. But it's interesting because if you're reading your fortune, you're like, well, I'll live up to here, meaning that I'm not going to die now, am I? So, you know, I think he was like feeling almost like safe in that moment, weirdly. But yeah, it makes more sense now, the line that the customer will use the sword of law upon you, meaning that he's using it against Nobunaga. He used it with Uvo, obviously, you know what I mean? And Uvo lied, meaning that he died. So I think that's what it means. He's using the contract blade, Nen blade to the heart, the sword of law, uses it upon Nobunaga, taking the calendar's secrets with him. Interesting. The way that is worded makes me think that Kurapika gets it, right? Because it's talking about the customer. So the customer will use the sword of law upon you, taking the calendar's secrets with him. So whatever contract Kurapika gives Nobunaga will come out living from this? If he gives him the... Because I don't think taking the calendar's secrets with him refers to Nobunaga himself. So he's like, if he does an Uvo and not gives up anything and dies for it, you know what I mean? I don't know. But it's interesting nonetheless. Anyway, the 11-legged spider grows homesick, losing 5 more legs. So yeah, again, referring to the idea that 5 people are going to die. Nobunaga being one of them. Again, you know, it's interesting that I'm talking about it if he's holding Hisoka's fortune telling, but it's actually his fortune telling again in different wording. Or almost a second fortune telling in a way. That I said Nobunaga could be one of them to die. You know, as that continues to pursue the 11th moon alone kind of thing. That he is obviously one of the people that dies. So that's 4, meaning that there's one more that has to die. Yeah, so I don't know. Do not leave your temporary shelter, for you are one of the remaining legs. Now, interesting. So yeah, but no, because... Damn. Fuck. No, because then he can't die then, can he? If you are one of the remaining legs, then he can't die. But if Kurapika uses the sword of law upon him, right, forcing Nobunaga to give him the troop's secrets, or the calendar's secrets, then that means that he wouldn't die, right? Nobunaga wouldn't die. Meaning that he'll still be alive, and I guess still technically a part of the Phantom Troop, because, you know, he is actually a part of them, even though he has betrayed them. But he'll still be alive. So he isn't one of the 5 then. Interesting. Okay. Do not leave your temporary shelter, though. Temporary shelter. What could that mean? You think like temporary shelter would mean the area that they're in now, right? The place that they're kind of holed up in right now. So if that's the case, that's where Kurapika is going to face him then. Face off with him there. Which I would have to assume that the Phantom Troop is elsewhere. Or they're just watching on and decide to have a one-on-one. I don't know. But I figure that must be what it is. Then again, I don't think they really need to adhere to these things. And obviously Nobunaga's like looking at it thinking that it's Hisoka's, when in reality it's his. So, you know, he might not even, you know, consider it at all and just leave it, you know. But yeah, that's what I've got. So it's interesting. It's interesting how these fortunes seem to work. Yeah. I think that's how it is. I think that's how I'm gonna say that it works. I think that no matter whose fortune you're looking at, it attains to the person looking at it, not to the person who it was written for originally. So interesting. Things could change, depend on if, you know, the Phantom Troop figures that out themselves. Or not. You see, I was wondering if Hisoka was doing a magic trick at first. You know what I mean? Because when he gave it to Pakunoda, I immediately took out a card, and I was wondering if he'd like, you know, he did some fucking kind of magic trick, or he used his texture surprise. I don't know. I don't know if that would work really. To like write something else down. But you know, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I'm going with my original answer. So yeah. Very, very interesting. Can't wait for the next episode. And that was a long discussion. I think that was the longest discussion I've had for this show so far. But I'm interested in and fascinated by the fortune telling stuff and how it might return to, you know, the show going forward. So yeah, that is all I've got. So thank you for watching. In the description below, I have links to certain things. One of them is the Discord. If you want any information regarding my content, you can get yourself over there. I also have a Patreon as well, so if you do want to support me on that, that'd be very much appreciated. There is a bunch of tiers and rewards depending on how much you can support me with. So there is the likes of early access on there. You get shows a week early, and you get 4 episodes of Hunt x Hunt every week, not just the 2 that the general public get. There's also full length on there, and other tiers where you can pay money to get your show watched and reacted to. So yeah, just go over, have a look. Links are in the description. But that is all I've got, so thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.